with great pleasure once again to welcome Rabbi Jessica Lenza with us, that is here with us visiting tonight, and she is going to give me the honor and pleasure of sitting in the pew and enjoying the beautiful Bar Torah. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Shabbat Shalom. And I would really like to thank all of you for welcoming me so warmly to Temple Judea this weekend. And I do mean that literally, because I'm from Brooklyn, and right now it is cold. It was 0 degrees yesterday, but felt like -11. Yeah, so truly thank you. And, all kidding aside, it was a real pleasure and an honor and a joy to collaborate with Rabbi Yaron and Cantor Elisha David. Thank you. So, the book of Genesis, sometimes it reads like a clickbait article titled, "The Top 10 Ways How Not to Parent." It's true. From the very first siblings of Cain and Abel until the last cycle of stories surrounding Joseph and his brothers, there's not one description of a healthy sibling relationship. Genesis is filled with stories of sibling rivalry on steroids. Siblings kill each other, they sell each other into slavery, they deceive one another, they battle over their shared husband, and the list goes on. It's a shock that more of us aren't only children. I mean, seriously. But it isn't entirely hopeless. One of the main story points of this week's Torah portion, Vayishlach, focuses on this surprising peaceful resolution of an infamous instance of sibling rivalry. Jacob and his twin Esau could not have been more different. I mean, Esau was big, he was red, he was hairy, he was a hunter, he was sort of this brute of a man. And Jacob, the younger and weaker twin, was small and pale, and he liked hanging out at home in the tent with his mom. But somehow, Jacob managed to best his big brother twice. He used his talent for trickery to deceive his brother out of the eldest's birthright and blessing. And those two things might not seem like a big deal to us in our modern world, but in biblical times, there was almost nothing as precious. When Jacob commits these crimes against his brother, Esau threatens to murder him, and I think he means it. Jacob flees and takes refuge with his uncle for many years. He marries a few times. He has 12 children, and then he decides to return home and face his brother. Jacob was terrified as this reunion approached. And it wasn't simply because Jacob would have to finally take responsibility for his deceitful actions, but Esau's justifiable rage was one of the primary reasons that Jacob fled his homeland in the first place. And now Esau is approaching with 400 men. The moment when they finally meet is filled with tension. Jacob, permanently injured from the wrestling match with the angel the night before, is limping. He is vulnerable with all of his possessions and every person he loves exposed. He's traveling with livestock and women and children, and is certainly no match for Esau's hundreds of battle-worthy companions. You can almost hear his heart pounding as he slowly approaches his older, stronger brother. Jacob falls to the ground and prostrates himself 7 times. And Esau runs towards him, but surprisingly not in aggression, in kindness. Esau embraces Jacob fiercely. He wraps him in this big bear hug and kisses him, and they both weep. Now, after this embrace, Esau inquires as to the motivation behind all these elaborate gifts Jacob sent before their encounter. Jacob very deferentially refers to Esau as my lord when he admits that it was to gain his favor. Esau's response, "I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours." Now, with this one line, Esau intimates not only to the gifts that Jacob has sent him, but also to the birthright and blessing, which Jacob took from him so many years ago. It's as though he's saying that he's no longer interested in retribution for Jacob's actions. Instead, he wants to pursue a peaceful relationship with his brother. Now, the brothers travel together for a while, and then they amicably part ways. By all accounts, the Torah seems to emphasize that after a lifetime of conflict, truly, when they were in the womb, they were fighting. these men can find harmony and forgiveness. But curiously, when the rabbis examine this story, they seem to come to an opposite conclusion. Now, this twist in rabbinic logic hinges on a scribal flourish that appears in a Torah scroll. So when a scribe carefully calligraphies a Torah, he or she has to add a particular unusual detail in the verse describing the brothers' embrace above the word kissed. The word is to be adorned with one dot above each letter. What could be the meaning in this unique scribal detail? What unusual thing might this be indicating? I mean, rabbis live for this stuff. So in Bereshit Rabbah, which is this collection of classic rabbinic midrashim, or stories about the book of Genesis, the rabbis try to answer those questions. Among the proposals, Rabbi Yanai rebuts an earlier idea that maybe the dots were to indicate Esau's compassion. Instead, he suggests, on the contrary, it teaches that Esau came not to kiss Jacob, but to bite him. But our ancestor Jacob's neck became like marble, and that wicked man's teeth were blunted. Hence, and they wept, teaches that Jacob wept because of his neck, and Esau wept because of his teeth. Pretty creative, right? Rabbi Yanai is basing this exegesis on Hebrew wordplay. The word kiss, Vayishlach from nishika, that's the word that appears in the text, is similar to the word bite, Vayishlach from nishika, nishicha. And it's also similar to the expression to blunt his teeth, or hikashinav. Despite this literary connection, I think we might all agree that Rabbi Yanai's thesis is somewhat far-fetched, right? Now, this rabbinic interpretation of the scene has always intrigued me because it's really, truly unexpected. Shouldn't the rabbis praise this rare example of biblical sibling reconciliation? Forgiveness is a value that we deeply respect in Jewish tradition. We dedicate a whole season to it. We emphasize that forgiveness benefits all parties, not just those who seek it, but also those who grant it. It's good for everyone, right? But even when there's this obvious positive outcome, the rabbis, in their wisdom, seem to point out an underlying fallout to the forgiveness process. So what could that drawback be to forgiveness? Where's this unexpected bite disguised as a kiss? In the 11 years of the brutal Sierra Leone civil war, over 50,000 people died. The rebels forced neighbors to commit horrific acts of violence against one another. When the war finally ended, the people of Sierra Leone tried to put their country back together. Now imagine living down the street from the person who cut off your hand. Could you regularly walk past the man who slit your father's throat? In a podcast of NPR's Hidden Brain, they investigate the complicated process of reconciliation in this extreme circumstance of post-Civil War Sierra Leone. This nonprofit began organizing reconciliation ceremonies among communities in Sierra Leone. And the podcast describes these ceremonies saying, steeped in tradition, the reconciliation ceremonies call for community members to confront one another in a public setting, to admit to wrongdoing, and seek forgiveness from people they have hurt. Around a bonfire, victims actually testify to the atrocities they experienced. Perpetrators admit to crimes and seek forgiveness. But no one is prosecuted or otherwise punished for participating. The details of the ceremonies described in the podcast are really heart-wrenching, and at the same time, profoundly hopeful. If these individuals who suffered unbelievably can somehow find forgiveness, perhaps there's hope for us and our fractured relationships. But there is an unfortunate twist in this instance as well. In spite of the positive outcomes from these reconciliation ceremonies, there are these unforeseen side effects. While those who participated in these ceremonies generally felt better towards each other, the nonprofit measured an increase in anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and depression. So the podcast explains this anomaly, saying, it's complicated to think how forgiveness translates into, personal psychological well-being. On the one hand, it might have this healing effect. On the other hand, these war memories are so potent and so powerful, and now they've been re-invoked. So you might feel better towards the person. You might be able to forgive the person for the things that they have done, but at the same time be coping with these traumatic events. We think that it's the way in which these memories are brought up in this kind of short, intensive manner, without follow-up for dealing with the negative images and feelings that actually lead to the worsening of this psychological outcome. Listening to the podcast, I immediately thought of the kiss or bite shared between Jacob and Esau. Perhaps Rabbi Yanai is alluding to the aftermath of forgiveness with this counterintuitive reading of the text. On the one hand, after the reunion, both Jacob and Esau, they feel better towards one another, and that's the kiss. On the other hand, their embrace stirs up old traumas, which leave both of them in personal pain. Jacob feels it in his neck, which he covered with goat skins many years ago to disguise himself as his brother and fool his father. Esau feels it in his mouth, reminding him of the lentil soup he hungrily devoured after trading it to Jacob for his birthright. This throbbing pain of troubled memories is the bite. While we want to encourage pursuing forgiveness, we need to embark on the process aware that there may be repercussions to revisiting past traumas. We need to approach reconciliation with a more nuanced understanding and embrace the contradictory and complex emotions spurred on by encountering those who we have wronged and those who have wronged us. Please don't misunderstand me. We should not avoid the kiss of reconciliation in fear of the bite. What I'm saying is simply that there are painful repercussions if we ignore the effects of the bite to simply bask in the glow of the kiss. We have to embrace them both as essential components of the forgiveness process. May we have the strength, like our ancestors, to face our faults and seek forgiveness. May we have the self-compassion to tend to our old traumas. And may we pursue the kiss of a peaceful existence in spite of the bite. Shabbat shalom.